Welcome to the Art of Healthcare show. Here we talk with experts who help us get better at the people stuff of healthcare so we can get better at helping the person with the problem. Today, I'm joined by Victor Ahipene. Victor is a physiotherapist. He's a past clinic owner. He's passionate about improving the communication that healthcare providers have with their clients or their patients. And he's also a pretty kick-ass public speaker as well. Victor, welcome, mate.
Thanks. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome. It's awesome. First question I want to ask you is why you're interested in the people stuff of healthcare.
Look, if we wind it back to, I guess, my high school years, I did a lot of public speaking, like you touched on, but in about third form, so 13, I went to a private school. Got thrown into a Māori speaking competition, like an English section of it, but I got thrown in because I was the only Māori basically in my year. So it wasn't like I wanted to do this. It was I got thrown into it, and we had bright red blazers. We were the only private school in the province, and so we were called Jaffas. We weren't overly, we fit the stereotype basically. And if you've ever been to any type of Māori ceremony, when you give a talk, there's usually a group behind you supporting, and so you finish your presentation, you finish your speech, and there's a song. I was up there by myself, trembling with these cue cards, just like shaking away, and absolutely bombed it. Like, it was not a great presentation. There's no ways to kind of fluff about it. And it wasn't till, I guess, after the presentation, I heard one of the speakers talking with their public speaking coach or their teacher, and I was like, what is this? And then our school had one, so I started enrolling in these public speaking courses, and by the end of high school I'd become a qualified speaking teacher. I'd really kind of gone from like bombing a speech to the completely other end of it. And I wanted to, when I left school, I was weighing up going and doing broadcasting in Christchurch or attempting to get into physio in Dunedin. And literally flip of a coin, I was like, if I miss out on physio after first year, I'll go and do this broadcasting school. Got into physio, and throughout it, I guess and I know this is a really long-winded answer, but I think it gives a bit of context, because I think there's other physios who kind of fit into this. Like, I'd only had visions on becoming a private practice physio. I didn't even know there were physios in hospitals. I don't think I'd stepped foot in a hospital before university time. And at the end of it, I thought, oh, look, I'm going to be fine because I'm confident with people. Like, I'm good with people, therefore that equals success down the track. And got out, and after, I guess, probably a couple of years of working, the first couple of years you're just like lapping up knowledge and trying to learn. And then I kept noticing that I was on this constant, I call it the new patient hamster wheel. You just like new patient in, new patient in, new patient in, and then you're just going through them, and it's like so tiring. You go away on holiday for like 4 days, and then you've lost your whole list because I didn't book it in a fortnight's time because they didn't necessarily see the value in you, or you hadn't presented the problem or anything well. And so I was getting sick of turning up on a Monday. I did 10 hours on a Monday, and I'd have like 9 new patients back to back for an hour each, and I'd just be toast. And it wasn't until I was sitting there, and I was always puzzled, because I was like, I get on with these patients well. They liked me as a person. They just didn't necessarily believe in the expertise that I had to solve their problem. It wasn't until I was, by chance, I don't know if you've had them, but the curtained off rooms. You're just separated by a curtain. And there was this physio, name was Deshni. She was treating a patient in there, and I was just doing notes in the other one. And just the way she was speaking to her patients kind of piqued my interest. And I was like, there's something about, because I was always trying to figure out, she had a waiting list every single day. She had like 5 to 10 people wanting to see her every single day. And I was like, how is she doing this? Because there can't be that big of a gap between where her skill set was as a therapist and where mine was. I didn't think I was an amazing therapist by any stretch of the imagination, but it kind of threw me down this rabbit hole of not just going, oh, well, look, I can give a good presentation and I'm a pretty friendly guy, to the point that I went and started learning about sales communication, about selling, about learning about people's objections. And once I started realizing she had accidentally picked up a lot of this, and then I see a lot of other therapists who are really good and full, who they do it through trial and error over a lot of years. And I was able, I guess, to model what some of them were doing, and then take things from outside of the health space to learn how to, I guess, sell myself better. And now I've learned how to, I guess, pass that on to others, which is, like I say, long-winded, but I think a lot of therapists find themselves in that space after a couple of years of like, oh my God, I'm burnt out. This sucks. Keep seeing all these new patients. How do I change this?
Yeah, and I think part of it's selling yourself, but I think a lot of it as well is selling the concepts that you're trying to get across to people as well, and framing that up in a way that people can absorb and people can take in and say, actually, no, this is valuable. This is really good stuff. I need to come back and see Victor so he can help me work through my health journey. And I know one of the areas that you think a lot about is our own limiting beliefs as health practitioners, and how that holds us back from having a really effective health program with our patients. Can you elaborate a little bit around kind of our mindset, or the mindsets that you see in clinicians about our limiting beliefs?
Yeah, well, and it's a brilliant question, because I touched on it slightly earlier, but it's these limiting beliefs that selling is taboo. I've run a lot of trainings for clinics and for therapists, and all of them associate selling with used car salesmen or insurance or whatever it may be. They've got the stigma towards selling. And then the ones that are most successful are the ones that are most comfortable with selling themselves. And part of it, I think one of our limiting beliefs is, I just need that next shiny object, and then people will start falling for it. And that's the next shoulder course, the next back course, the master's qualification, the PhD. I need whatever that next thing is.
Those letters on the wall behind me.
Yeah. And then everything's going to fall into place. But there's multiple things, and I think once you break down, you tend to find, and it's a drill, it's a process that I work through with people, and saying there's basically four main objections that patients are going to have. It's price, time, alternative, like is there an alternative solution? For me, is it the chiropractor, the massage therapist, pain medication, the doctor, surgery, all these different things, or the actual product that you're selling, which is physiotherapy in my case. And I've asked groups, and I said, I want you to rank those and what you think your patient's main objection is for not rebooking or for canceling an appointment. And none of them ever have anywhere close to the same percent. One person will be 80% price, another person will be time, another person will be alternative products, another person will be they don't believe that physio is the right solution for them. And so it really starts beginning to highlight what is the person's own self-limiting beliefs, rather than, and I give the example, like if you've got a 9 out of 10 sore back, or 11 out of 10 as our patients will love to tell us. If you've got that and a patient comes in the door and you say, look, I need to see you again, tomorrow morning, I've got one spot at 9:30. If they've got work, they're going to move their work around, because they value getting out of pain, but then they hopefully value your expertise. When they're down to like a 2 out of 10 pain, if you haven't shown them a clear pathway and proven your value, they're like, oh, look, I can't get in at 9:30, or I can't. And so you'll start saying, oh, look, they couldn't get in at 9:30. That was the reason. But really, it's a lot of the framing that you've done previously. And even to the biggest extent, which I find a lot of newer therapists really struggle with, is the price. They don't necessarily value their ability, and particularly in Australia, where there's not necessarily the ACC system, but it still works the same. A physio on the Gold Coast, Brad Bear, I love the term that he does. He calls it diagnosing by the hip pocket, and it's going, oh, okay, well, this person's a single parent. They probably can't afford to come in twice a week. So, I'll just get them in once a week and it'll take a little bit longer. But you're not giving them the best possible treatment, and then they're not getting the best possible recovery, and then they lose faith in you because of that. You've got to give them the best option. And then, once that kind of penny drops with a lot of them, and they're like, yeah, I've definitely been doing that with these particular patients. Or, they've come to you for a professional advice, and you've given them amateur advice on the back end because you've made a decision on what they can and can't afford.
How do we get around those limiting beliefs that we hold that we're pushing onto our patients?
That's it. I mean, and
that's a big question.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole. I mean, I think part of it is, and I kind of let the rabbit out of the bag with the no one getting the same percentages. But even if you do it with your fellow clinicians and things like that, and then you start seeing what are the things that are consistently coming up for me as to when a person rings up reception and says they can't come back because of such and such. What are the consistent things that are coming up in my cancellations? And this is a real, I guess, diving deeper into those 4 objections that I was talking about that patients often have, is as you develop your initial consultation, that's really what I try and work on, is if we can set everything up from the start, you don't necessarily have to know the perfect diagnosis, the perfect treatment plan, all of these things initially. But if you're setting up and handling their objections, then you're going to be able to get their buy-in. And I realize this isn't necessarily handling your own self-limiting beliefs, but you're going to start realizing because most therapists don't realize that these objections exist, and that their patients are actually telling them subconsciously and consciously through what they're saying in these initial consults, like, they're saying something either regarding pain or regarding price or regarding frequency. I've got a cat just attacking the door. Give me 2 seconds.
All good, man.
Sorry, everyone listening, but cats will either attack your legs or the door.
That in.
Yeah, that was my cat's objection to podcasts. But once what you tend to find in having done these sessions with clinic owners and their staff, and then reviewing them at 3 months, I get them after each initial consult to write what were the questions that were posed to you at the end of your consultation, because they're generally the objections that you haven't overcome by the patient. It may be that you haven't given them a healing time frame or an expected healing time frame, and that means they've got a product objection because they don't know if the product's going to be the right solution. You may have not covered the frequency, and then they're like, oh, okay, well, I can't factor in whether price is an objection or not, or that you may have not picked out the best, found out which times are going to work for them. And they may have already in their head decided that, oh, look, I work from 9 to 5, I can't come in. They may not realize that you start at 7 or finish at 7 or have certain days. And so I think once you start identifying what are the common things, you realize that you're either not bringing certain things out in your sessions, and they're either self-limiting beliefs, or they're just things that you're just consciously not coming up with. And then, I think that what I've seen is price is the biggest thing, particularly for newer graduates, in being able to value what they're giving. And part of that is finding, for me, I went from my first ever role was in Canada. Terrible boss, horrible learning environment, awesome clinic in a university treating awesome athletes and unlimited resources, basically. But I didn't develop. Then I came to Australia and I went to literally the other end of the spectrum, had an amazing business owner, awesome learning environment. And that allowed me, I guess, to start overcoming some of my own limiting beliefs around price, because I just saw, like, look, we're doing 150 hours of in-clinic training a year. Like, how can I not be better? Like, how can I not bring value to my patients? Oh, look, I'm getting I've got a waiting list now. Oh, wow, I must be bringing value. But from an initial side of things, I think you'll generally see from a price standpoint is they will undertreat. And there's a stigma, and I know this isn't just necessarily physios, but I've seen it across multiple different allied health, is rather than overtreat, there's the stigma towards overtreating. I don't want to be that therapist that overtreats. And I've probably met one of them in my whole career, like therapists that actually overtreat. This was probably more in the ultrasound and differential days, more so than the current climate. But I think the bigger disservice to patients is actually underservicing them, and then they don't get results, and then you start second guessing as a new therapist your actual ability to get people better. They drop off, and like I say, you get back on that new patient hamster wheel.
Yeah, and it turns into a bit of a spiral as well, as if you don't value the skill set that you're bringing to the table, then people lack confidence in you, so they don't do what you ask them. You don't get the results. Sometimes you do, because natural history is a great thing with health. Yeah. But then that knocks your confidence even further, and you really start to question your value. One thing that I've found helpful for myself, and also talked to a few other health practitioners about as well, is comparing the cost of what you're providing with another product. My sister-in-law is a general practitioner, and she was saying that the cost of coming to see them is $20, which is super cheap. But also, I think, like health professionals, we want to pack in so much value into one session that it's almost kind of drowns the poor patient. But if you compare $20 to a lot of other products, like $20, you get a moderate box of beer for $20. Yeah. Going to see your doctor is going to be more value for your money than buying a box of beer.
Yeah, and even just going for a massage, versus say coming to see a physio or a chiro or whatever the therapist may be, is it's you're saying, okay, well, and I'm not talking about like a trained massage therapist who's a remedial therapist or anything, like your local in the mall type massage joint. You're still paying a decent amount for that. Again, it's the passive side of things which people enjoy. But going back to something that you said, I'm just trying to touch on it. It'll come back to me, but I think being able to understand that people have options, but they also have to pay money for those other options as well. So I think we demonize money. We know that the best therapists out there see their patients more than the lower skilled therapists, and to be able to do that, it costs money for these patients, whether the patient's paying it or not. We know that, having seen enough people who have to pay and who have to and don't have to pay, the value that they then put onto us as well. There's a therapist, and I love what he does. He's got his own method. It's called the Ridgeway technique. He's based out of Brisbane, and an initial consultation with him is $800 for an hour, and 400. And I saw that face.
The solid day.
Yeah, and 450 for a follow-up consult. But if you're and this is I think a good mind shift for a lot of people, is if you go and pay $800 to anybody, and they tell you to do a particular exercise or change a particular habit, versus you get it for free with some sort of government rebate or your private health insurance or whatever, it doesn't cost you $1. What's your likelihood of compliance? Like if someone's like, you need to go and do 10 squats every hour or 10 lumbar extensions. Yeah, you need to go and do these McKinsey things. All right, I'm freaking setting a timer. I'm going to make sure. And so he gets great results. Like, yeah, his patients, they monitor their stats. They follow up with all their patients. They look at positive outcomes and things like that. It's not just necessarily flash in the pan, but directly across the road, there's a physiotherapy that charges a tenth of what he does. So it's not like people are isolated in some rural community and they only have one physio to pick from. There's one literally across the road, directly opposite them. And so being able to, I think, as therapists, understand that the more we value ourselves, the more that our patients are going to be able to value us and the better outcomes that we're going to get. And that doesn't always necessarily mean having to charge $800 for our time. But I mean, if you saw one person a day and build $4,000 a week, how much effort would you be able to put in and energy would you be able to put into those patients? And just kind of going on that point, the physio that I said that I had that kind of epiphany moment with when I was in the cubicle opposite her, she came to me one day, and I'll just use random numbers. Let's say it was $80 a consult. She said, "Oh, look, I'm thinking about this wait list that just never stops. I never get a gap. Someone cancels and it's already full. I'm thinking I'm going to raise my prices." And I was like, "Oh, all right." And I think it might have been like 110 for an initial consult and 80 for a follow-up. And she goes, "I'm going to increase it 180." And she goes, "I'm going to increase it by $5 per consult." And I said, "Guess what? No one's even going to notice." I said, "If you actually want to make a dent," and we did some rough numbers, and I said to her, "Make your follow-up consults from $80 to $120, so a 50% increase, and from $100 to $150 to see you as a new patient." And she was obviously like hesitant. Her big thing was like the price, that she had faith in her skill and her ability, but she at that price point. And she was like, we did the maths on, look, if 30% of your list disappear and you've got more time in each day and you're not as burnt out, like it's going to be happy days and you're still actually going to be billing more and making more money. And then 3 people off her list went and saw other therapists within our clinic. So the clinic lost no business. She still had a waiting list every day. Everyone said, "Oh, I thought you would have upped your prices ages ago. Like, yeah, you're the best physio I've ever seen. I travel halfway across Brisbane to see you." Like, and that was obviously a big moment for her as well, understanding like I've been undervaluing myself. And I said, just keep upping them every 6 months until you actually start seeing a slight drop off. And then you found, where the market, I guess, values you, which you can't necessarily do as a new grad. You do have to work on these different things, but I think it's also important to understand that people will value you as well.
And we've talked about kind of thinking about how we value ourselves and kind of comparing it from a price perspective, but articulating that value to the patient, like it's all well and good if we feel really, really good about ourselves. How do we articulate the value that we provide to someone else other than kind of having a price point there?
Yeah, well, I think but it starts, and this is why I heavily focus on the initial consult, because it's where it's first impressions basically that you're having with these patients. And I try and with most aspects of my life, is consistency is what creates excellence. Like, if you're an amazing golfer, it's because you've done multiple things consistently well, rather than having one phenomenal ability. No one's born to be a physio, no one's born to be a podiatrist, but the ones that are really great are the ones who have done things consistently well. Like, not even well, like they've just consistently done things that get results. And what I found with my initial consultations is, if I could frame myself as an expert, and I back my abilities, I think there's other physios who are better than me. That doesn't mean that I can't be good as well. But being able to the 80-20 rule, the Tim Ferriss or Pareto's principle of, you can get 80% of the results from 20% of the work. I believe that we need to start realizing that as an expert side of things as well. Is if you can teach 8 out of 10 people about rehab and getting their body, who are walking down the street, You are an expert to your community. The problem is we live in this bubble where we go to work with other people who are good, and then we go to conferences with other people who are better, and we start kind of getting this almost tall poppy of like, oh, I'm not as good as that person, and keeping up with I call it keeping up with the physio-owners, and we're always like, this particularly I go back to the new grad thing, but you're like, oh, someone you graduate, oh, so and so did McKenzie, oh, that must be better than me now, or so and so did Lynn Watson's shoulder course or did dry needling, and like you're always going, oh, well, that's why I'm not quite there yet. But going back to the initial consultation is first believing that you're an expert, but then also positioning yourself as an expert. And what that means is that you're in control of the process. You're not necessarily telling the person that you're in control, you're showing them. So when they walk in the door, it's, hey, I'm Victor, thanks for coming in. Have you been to physio before? Now, the reason I lead with this, and small talk, there's rapport, and rapport is a person believing that you have the solution to whatever their problem is. Rapport, secondary rapport, is all that other stuff that people think is the really important stuff. The dog's name, their kid's name, where they work, all the irrelevant stuff that, like I said, when I was younger, I was like, I got on with these people so well. Why did they? And I take it so personally when they'd cancel out, because I was like, I got on with them so well. But I just built 12 layers of secondary rapport deep and hadn't shown them that I had the product or the solution to their problem. And so asking that question, have you been to physio before, allows me to control the rest of the consultation. And so what I mean by that is they can say, yes, I have. You go, oh, cool. Well, I may do things slightly different. What's going to happen today is I'm going to ask you some really specific questions to get a bit of a history. Then we're going to do, relative to your answers, some specific tests to have a look at what's going on. I'm going to put together a treatment plan and present it to you. And if we have time, we'll begin that treatment plan, but I'll give you some things to go away with at the end of today. And that way I'm handling their expectations that they were just going to jump on the bed like their previous physio and just get a massage for 20 minutes, or that they were going to get acupuncture, or they were going to do this and this and this. They may bring them up, but I can handle those early on. Whereas if I wait till the end of the consult and they go, oh, usually I just get 30 minutes of massage. And then they leave and their expectations aren't met. And that just leads to undiscussed or unmet expectations, leads to future resent. Like, they're going to walk away and go, oh, like that physio didn't do what I was expecting. And they go, whereas when they leave and they go, that physio did exactly what he said he was going to do in that consultation. And if they bring those things, they're going to bring those things that go, oh, usually I just get acupuncture. Cool. Look, I still need to be able to get a thorough examination of you and make sure that this is exactly the same thing. And so I can do this appropriately. If they say, no, I haven't been to physio before, I give them exactly the same spiel.
Yeah.
And so from there, if you walk into your GP and they're like, oh, how's your dog? Oh, you play golf? Oh, that's great. Oh, you play soccer? Oh, that's cool. Versus boom, 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 here's your prescription, go and get this particular, go to physio, go to the pharmacist, go to the surgeon, go to whatever. You're gone in. I mean, they've got a higher perceived expertise than us to the general population. But us being able to differentiate that and be able to start off as an authority, hey, this is what's going to happen. You get to the end of the consult and you say you're going to give them a treatment plan because we have these other patients that think they're going to get better in one session. We're able to address that really early. I'm going to give you a treatment plan and we're going to outline how we're going to get you back to where you want to go. And so little of it. And like I took an extra, I didn't mind the cook and guardies and the bowler when I was at university. It took me a year longer to get through physiotherapy. So I'm not this phenomenal PhD, evidence-based physio. I try and follow evidence-based as much as I can, but your patients don't care. Your patients don't care about evidence-based treatment. I'm not saying go and be unethical. I'm saying if you go to a dentist and they say, we've got the latest machine for doing root canals, or I'm following the latest protocols, you're like, I freaking hope so. I came to see you because you're a dentist and that's what I expected you to do. Your patients have an expectation that you're giving them the best possible treatment. Whereas I jump on a physio's website, it's like, we pride ourselves on using evidence-based treatments and providing a tailored thing. And it's like, that's not something your patients have ever come in and said, hey, look, Oh yeah, I saw Chris on your website. I was wondering, is he an evidence-based therapist, or yeah, does he just think positive thoughts towards me?
He just kind of does what he wants. So
Yeah,
I've heard
yeah.
about him, eh?
Yeah, and I think yeah, being able to set these expectations, like, yeah, and that's kind of the tip of the iceberg that allows for everything else in your initial consultation. But all I'm really trying to do in my initial consultation is position myself, find out what their true drivers are, their true goals, not just like, I'd love to get back to sport, but some visceral things that you can tap into. Yeah, get some sort of diagnosis, and then be able to present them a plan. Whereas, like you say, the drinking out of the fire hose that we try and do in our consults, and it's like, look, I've got to try and do my subjective and objective as quickly as possible, not handle any of their objections, do some hands-on, give them some exercises, give them some ergonomic things so that they feel that they got their money's worth. What I say to that is that too much information creates overload or overwhelm, and overwhelm leads to inaction. So you would have done it. Oh, I'm not. I did it when I first came out. It's like, you give your patient 5 exercises after their first session. Like, here's the 5 exercises to do, and they come back and they've done none, because human nature is like, haven't got time to do 5, so I'll do 0.
Yeah,
got time to do 2, but I'll do 0. Whereas you give them 1, and you get some compliance, you get some dopamine, you get some reward system, and that's exactly what we try and do. And we try and do a million things in that consult. We become poor with our time management. We run over. We burn ourselves out. Our patients get unhappy because we haven't kept our word to being on time, and all of these flow-on effects. So I think being able to prize ourselves to be able to tick all of these boxes, it really allows, when you're presenting this plan at the end, that the patient, regardless, I've had physios who are a year out who are overbooked, and I've had worked with ones who are 10 years out who couldn't hold a list. So it's a myth that more expertise leads to being a better physio if you're missing this kind of the communication catalyst.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you with that, Victor, is that you're setting expectations right at the start of and actually I follow a very similar framework to you. I call it a plan of attack rather than a treatment plan. But basically everything else word for word. So setting expectations at the start, you're asking them some good questions, finding out what they care about, what their problems are. You're ruling out the nasty stuff and getting a good idea of what's going on. And then you're telling them what the process is going to be from there. Yeah,
and phenomenal reflective listening there by you.
Thank you.
which is one part of it. Yeah, people in the studies that I do follow, people have said that they felt like it was a non-encounter. They felt like their session was a non-encounter with a physio because they felt like they weren't listened to. And that the therapist thought they were too much of an expert, which is basically, rather than that end of year subjective, like, hey, have I heard you right? Is this what we've got? Have I missed anything? Yeah, that you think might be important for your thing. If that person then goes, oh, look, yep, yeah, they ticked everything off. I've given them everything I can. Again, this kind of reverts the blame back onto them if they leave and they're like, oh, he didn't ask me about such and such. It's like, no. Victor asked me if I had anything else, and I forgot to tell him. I have to bring it up next time. And there's definitely going to be times where they stew over that. The patient, oh, that person didn't even ask me about my such and such, and you're like, okay. Whereas you're giving them the option to do it. So
Victor, I mean, a lot of what we've talked about, people can put into practice tomorrow. But in terms of anything else that we can put into practice in our clinics, in our healthcare lives tomorrow, what's one piece of advice you would give people?
Systemize. As a lot of people, I like things that are generally accepted that are usually wrong. Like I like challenging those sorts of things. And I heard a great saying, and it was, most people think practice makes perfect, but if you go to the driving range, and I like golf, so if you go to the driving range and you hit a big slice, and then you get 100 balls and you hit another 100 slices. You're just making it permanent. Practice makes permanent. So yeah, if you're going in there, like I say, and you're starting every consult, just say in that framework or a particular one that you choose. Like, yeah, a lot of therapists that I train their teams, they're like, oh, that's what I do. And I'm like, yeah, it took us 10 years of trial and error to figure out what works, and you could have learned it in day one, of your degree or of your working life. So I think trying to find what is well received by your patients, and as monotonous as it is, systemize it. Have that story for the shoulder, have that story for the back, have that story for an x-ray or a cortisone injection that you can just go to, that your patients understand, because that systemization or that consistency is what will create excellence for you as a therapist.
Awesome, man. That's great advice. And like the people listening to you are like, man, he's telling that same shit joke again. Yeah. God damn it.
Well, you do hear it. You hear the person over the curtain. You're like, oh, they're telling that again. But then you hear the patient go, oh, really? Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. And you're like, well, you're telling it for a reason.
Yeah. Victor, if people are interested in the work that you do and finding out more about you, mate, where's the best place that they can go and do that?
So I run some in-person training as well as online, and some of them are actually recorded for those. So check out alliedhealthskills.com/training, and that'll take you to the event page. But it's also got my email on there. So if you're looking for your clinic or yourself to run through any of that communication training, then you can do that. Otherwise, somewhere on all the socials, there's not too many people with my name.
Cool. I'll link all of that stuff up as well, mate. And Victor, just for the community today, what couple of questions should we be asking ourselves, do you think, to enhance our practice?
Here's one that I got challenged with years ago by my awesome boss in Brisbane that I first had was, are you a therapist with 10 years experience who's done 1 year of learning and repeated it 10 times? Or are you somebody who's continually evolved over those 10 years? Because there's a lot of therapists out there who will go out and they'll get their skill set and then they'll rest on their laurels for the next, they'll just repeat. I saw it when I graduated, the therapists who were like, oh, ultrasound, doesn't matter, like that's what I do, and then this new the new generation comes through and pushes it. So I guess that'd be my first thing, is make sure that you're continually evolving. Otherwise you're literally going to get bored and burnt out because you're not challenging yourself. And the second thing is setting boundaries. I think from whether you're the owner, whether you're a staff member or a contractor, being able to set appropriate boundaries to what is work, what is not work, what you're willing to do above and beyond for the organization that you either own or work for, is going to, once you start setting these boundaries, it's going to create a lot more space to be able to say no and feel comfortable with it, or yes and feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, awesome, man. And I think a great place for those boundaries are the questions that you just asked. What is work? What is not work? And what is above and beyond for me? Victor, thanks so much for joining me today, mate. It's been awesome.
My pleasure. Thanks, mate.